Hi, and welcome to Tuesday Community Connections. Today I want to talk with you about, in some ways, kind of a difficult conversation, a difficult discussion, but one that to me is a bit mind-boggling and it makes me sad, and to be honest, it breaks my heart when I see what's going on. All of this rejecting people because of the color of their skin, or feeling it's okay to treat people differently because their skin is of a different color, or they were born in a different place. I mean, how easy is it, and how often do we see in the news or wherever we read on social media that it's okay to tell somebody, you're not welcome here, you're not wanted here, you're not good enough to be here, to be one of us. I mean, people of different skin colors other than white are spit on and they're bullied and even killed at times, feeling like they just aren't quite the same as the rest of us who are good. And the difference is their skin is a different color. I mean, we were born with the color of our skin. Not any one of us chose what color we were going to be. It was part of being born. God, who created each one of us, created us to be who we are. God gave us our skin color. And if you think about it, God could have made all of us green. He could have made us all 3 feet tall. He could have made all of us with blue eyes. He could have made us all with black hair. He could have made us so that we all like exactly the same things and think exactly the same way and do exactly the same things. I mean, somehow the way we're behaving today makes me think that that seems to be what we want. If you're not like me, you're wrong. But God made us different and gave us diversity to enrich our lives, to make each one of us unique and special and individual in the person that we are. God made us different so that we can enrich the lives of others and see things in a new way, or see things that on our own we probably wouldn't see. I mean, imagine what it would have been to have been created into a world where everybody thought and did and looked and acted exactly the same. I mean, talk about being a computer game, right? Where you're just a little kind of being that walks around. Or a robotic world where there's no diversity, nothing different, no new thoughts. Everybody just is doing the same thing, thinking the same thing, looking exactly alike. But God created every one of us to be the person that we are, unique and different from everybody else. And none of us are better than anybody else, and none of us are less than anyone else. Every single one of us is a child of God, and every single one of us is loved by God. In our country today, there is those divisions that are so deep, and race figures into so many of them. I mean, here, this is our country. We don't want to be the minority. We don't want foreigners to be here where we are. If you be like us, if you think like us, if you look like us, then you're okay. Now, the first thing that I think is, you know what? This isn't our country. I mean, the first people here were the Native Americans. And so if we want to look at Earth and say, whose country is this? Well, we kind of came over from a different place. We were different people, and we came and we lived here. But even the bigger picture, and the one that you and I as Christians need to look at, is the fact that this isn't our country. This is God's world. We're living in it. We are stewards of God's world. It's not ours that we own, and ours that we can decide, and ours that we can figure out what to do and how to do things. God has made us stewards, but at the same time, this world belongs to God, not to us. I have to admit, like I said, all of this talk about skin color and race and all of that just breaks my heart. And in my more cynical times, I start to wonder, are we going to move to the next phase where we say, well, people with dark eyes only see evil? So those people are bad people and we need to reject them and get rid of them too, because look at their eyes are dark. That's got to be what they see. Or are we going to say, well, people who are short, we can decide what is short, but that short people aren't as good because there's not not as much of them, and they can't do as many things, and they can't, they can't see over people's heads enough, and they can't do as much as everybody else, and so, short people too are just not quite as good. They're not worth it. I mean, are we on our way to that kind of a world? And does that make any more sense than deciding people are bad because of the color of their skin? Skin color is a gift given by God. God created us that way, with the color that we have. It's a blessing. God gave it to us to enrich the world. It's not a label. It's part of who you are, just like your eye color or just like your heart. There's not a thing you can do about it. It's a gift that you were given. But how easy is it for us just to look at something like skin color and then bunch everybody with that same skin color, or we could say eye color or height, into the same category and get into stereotypes and decide that a whole group of people are bad or not good enough or different, or we label them in one way or another. I mean, we've all experienced that in some ways, right? I mean, think about it. When you were growing up, well, you're too young to do that. You can't do that yet. Remember as a teenager being just frustrated that you're not old enough to do things, and sometimes people find ways to do things even though they're not old enough. But how irritating is that? And at the same time, look at the other end of the spectrum. Looking at people with gray hair and deciding they're old people. And so you have to talk loud because they're an old person and they can't hear. Or they must have to use a wheelchair. Or they're an old person, they just don't get it. That's an old person. They can't have new thoughts. They're just old-fashioned. These old people, they can't do anything on their own. I mean, I bet some of you have experienced that. And the number of years that you have really has nothing to do with what you can or cannot do. Partly has to do with genes, and partly has to do with who you are and what you can do. I mean, there are some 90-year-olds that are out driving all over and running around and being involved in all kinds of things. And there are some 50-year-olds who are happy to sit at home and who are content not to be able to move around a whole lot. But it's real easy, isn't it? Just to label people according to their age. I remember when I was first ordained, one of those early years, I was in a grocery store buying groceries one day and ran into a member of the church. And her reaction to me was really interesting. It was like, oh. Well, yeah, I suppose you have to buy groceries too, huh? I mean, somehow she had gotten me as a pastor into some little box where I guess I lived in a different world, and to see me in a grocery store just took her by surprise. Didn't expect I would be there. How often do we do those kinds of things to people based on skin color or age or height or where you live or what language you speak? If you look at skin color, which seems to be the big thing that we emphasize and we look at these days, and the battle is over who is white and who is not. And isn't it interesting that you can look white, but if you've got just a little bit of any other nationality in you, you're not white. I mean, you've got to be white enough. I mean, so I've thought there are those people who have that almost translucent skin that you can see through and often red hair. Is that white enough or is that too white? I mean, people in the summer love to lay out and get a tan. So do we treat them differently then because now they're tan? They're dark? I've always kind of gotten a kick out of the fact that though we don't like people of a different skin color, our goal in the summer so often is how tan can we get? And think about Jesus. Jesus wasn't white. Jesus was born in the Middle East. I mean, the pictures that we have of Jesus make him look like he was born in Norway. You know, the blonde hair that glows in a white face. But if Jesus was born in the Middle East, that's probably not at all what he looked like. I think as I have contemplated this whole issue, that part of what we're dealing with and why we're so compelled to look at white is best is we're afraid. We're afraid we're not good enough. We're afraid we're going to be replaced. We're afraid that others are going to have more power than we are. And so if we can just put them down, if we can just keep them in place, if we can just treat them differently and say they're not good, then I can feel better about me. I can have a little bit of confidence. I can feel like I have a place. But you know what? That just is not accurate thinking at all. We get it wrong when we look at things that way. God created us, every one of us, to be who we are completely. Our skin color, our hair color, our height, our eye color. God made us to be who we are. And God loves us, every one of us, just as we are. We don't have to prove ourselves that we're worthy. We don't have to win God's love. We don't have to wonder if there's going to be a place for us. God created this world and everyone in it. And there is a place for every one of us. And when we reject part of God's creation, what are we saying to God? What a slap in God's face to say part of your creation is awful and we can treat them like dirt. Part of your creation has the wrong skin color and so we don't have to pay attention to them. God doesn't love any one of us any more or any less because of our skin color or for any other reason. Again, it comes back to fear, I think. If we can keep others out, then we're safe, and then we'll feel okay. And then we can be with just others like me. Somehow, I think, if we can be in this robot-like world where we all think alike and look alike and act alike and do everything the same, then we're going to be safe. Well, maybe it would be safer. I don't think it would be any more fun. I don't think it would be very dynamic. I think it would be pretty routine and robotic. And that's not how God created us. God created us to live in this dynamic world that is filled with all different kinds of people with different kinds of ideas and asks us, first of all, to love God with all that we are, excuse me, and then to love others just as He loved us. And you know that there's no definition on who those others are. It's everyone else that God created. God calls us to love others. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to be friends. Doesn't mean that we can't disagree. It doesn't mean that we even have to do things together, but it does mean that we have to respect and to care for others, because those that we are rejecting and putting down, they're children of God that God loves and that God made to be who they are, unique and different on purpose. Easiest thing is just to lump people together as stereotypes. Young people, old people, men, women, people with one skin color or another. Be easy if we can just deny creation and say that everybody ought to be just like we are. But we don't have to live in that kind of fear, because God over and over and over again speaks through prophets and people saying, do not be afraid. I am with you. Have no fear. God created us to live a life of joy and peace. God created us unique and different and called us to live as community and to respect and to love one another. I know these discussions on race in particular will go on and on for a long time. but I hope that we can at least start to listen to each other. And as we look at others, whether we like or agree with what they're doing or not, we can listen to who they are and listen to their pains and listen to their desires. We can treat them with respect, that we can find ways, instead of pushing others away, that we can come together, knowing that each one of us has a place and that each one of us is created on purpose to be who we are by the God of all creation, who loves every one of us. God bless you, and have a good week.